McKenna, and today I'm going to be sharing my testimony. So, I don't really even know where to start, so I guess I'll start at the beginning. And this is basically my life story because my walk with God started really early on. I'm 14 right now, and so basically, I feel like my life really started when I was in third grade, because that is when I started to have really bad social anxiety, starting in third grade, and it was really hard for me to make friends. I don't even know why. I was just so scared to talk to people, and that's also when I made my friend Butan, who is also very, very important in my story later on, and still is very important. She's still my best friend. So, yeah, around that time, around third grade, fourth grade, I had started to get really lonely because my parents got divorced. I think that's what spiraled me into that. And then I was also, starting to get a little bit depressed. But I didn't even really understand it, so I thought I was insane. Because, as I said, I didn't have many friends I could talk to, and me and Vuitton at the time didn't really talk that deeply, like stuff like that. And so, it was just really hard. And even sometimes I thought about like hurting myself, but I was always too shy. Not shy. I was always too scared, of the pain. And I had known some people who had done that, but I was always too scared, and thank God for that. And then later on in my story, when I got to fifth grade, maybe a little before that, I came to the conclusion that I was depressed because all I listened to was sad music. Alec Benjamin, Cupid, Moral of the Story, just so many sad songs. And, I wanted to be happy, but I didn't know how to. And I guess my parents' divorce kind of is what kick-started my life. And after that, I feel like not long after, I was expected to do a lot of chores and a lot of babysitting, and I feel like that was a lot on top of like the mental conflict that I was going through. And yeah, around fifth grade, probably a little bit in fourth grade, I had started to get dissociative because I would let my thoughts wander, and they would start to question reality because of how far I would let them go. And around this whole time, I was saved, or I wasn't saved. I was Christian, but I hadn't encountered Jesus. So probably what really started it for me was when I went to a youth group service at Legacy Church, which is near my house. And I don't know, they were praying over me in tongues, and that was like the first time, other than my mom, that I'd been prayed over like in tongues. And I remember before they had asked everyone, like they were doing an altar call, and this was my first time ever going down for the altar call. They just said, don't worry about whatever anyone else is thinking, and just let go whatever is holding you back. Just let go and walk up. And like everyone walked up, including me. And it was just so powerful because I got in the car like after the service, and I just felt like a completely different person. And I didn't want to go back, and the thought of going back into my normal life and and all my family members being the same while I was so changed just really hurt me, the idea of that. But like after that service, it's like my depression was just gone, and I was no longer dissociative, because whenever I had a thought like that, I could just say, God, take that away, and He would. And so after that service, and my life was completely changed, I still had a lot of problems, and I was kind of leaning into, that emo punk style. I would like wear a bunch of chokers. I would wear, gothic style clothing, and listen to like punk music, rock music, just all that. And if you know punk music, it sounds cool, but it's very depressing, the lyrics. And so also I had started to like learn a lot about things, and like use character AI for lust. I know I'm really, it's hard to say that out loud. I've never said that out loud. But yeah, I did go on character AI, and I started to actually lust and masturbate. It's very hard to say. But God freed me from that. It was just, I was so disgusted with myself and the person that I was, because, I just wanted to be more for God, but I was so far off. I just wanted Him to tell me what to do. And even in the worship services, like, I wanted to praise, but I couldn't stop thinking about what other people were thinking of me. And so at this point, God had cured me from my dissociativeness, and He had pretty much cured me from my depression, even though I still got sad often. I was still lonely all the time. And then it wasn't until another service, and even another service after that, but the first one, like after that other life-changing one, was where I went to Vuitton's church. I mentioned her previously. So her church is apostolic, and they have a great community, and I love all the people there. And so they were doing a service about like being on a fence, and like how there were two sides, like the good side and the bad side, and about how you had to go all in for Jesus, and you needed to surrender all the things in your life that were like darkness and things. So like including like your music and clothes and like simple stuff like that. So I went home that day and I searched through my playlist, and I got rid of every song that wasn't like every song that was negative and against God, and and to be honest, it really made me upset, and I cried a lot getting rid of like my 21 Pilot songs, because I hadn't realized how bad they were until I listened to the lyrics. And then I got rid of, a bunch of my clothes, but at this point I was still kind of into the emo style, So I was dressing more modestly, but still in an emo type way. And I actually dealt with that a lot up until like just recently, when I went through my clothes again and got rid of all the emo type stuff. But yeah, after that point, I had gotten rid of all of my Christian music. No, after that point, I had gotten rid of all of my like punk style music and all of that. I was still dealing with stuff. I was still lonely, and I actually felt more alone than ever now that I had gotten closer to God, because I was not only I already isolated myself from everyone, but isolating yourself from the world on top of that is even more. And I just had to learn that God is enough. And after like weeks and weeks and weeks of crying out to God, like every week, and trying to learn to trust Him, I fell in love with Him. It's like it was no longer just, oh, well, here's this deity that's gonna help you, and it became, He's my heavenly Father. He's like the one true love, and He just began to save me so much more from everything. And I went to NAYC with Viewtowns Church, and that helped me a lot with my clothing. And also after that, I found my calling, through like, it's really like simple. I was just texting like an AI, like a Christian AI, and asking it, like telling it all of my gifts, and asking what were some like good jobs for me. And it said counselor was as one of them, and that really stood out to me because I've always been empathetic and very sensitive. So I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like that was a great like idea and opportunity. And it wasn't until later my mom told me about like the Love Lady Center where she got saved. Like she was in jail and having a terrible life, and she got saved, that I knew that was right for me, being a counselor there. So, I mean, there's just so much that God has saved me from. And I've even seen some people, that I was like friends with, like that I used to be friends with, and they, just the type of people they've grew up to be. It makes me so sad, but it also makes me so glad that God saved me from that, because the like people that I would have stayed friends with if I hadn't changed, they were doing stuff like they were vaping, they were dressing really inappropriate, like short shorts and tights and crop tops just out in public, and wearing tons and tons of makeup, and just caring about what every other person thinks. And also there was my social anxiety, like I mentioned earlier, throughout my whole 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. Even when I had gotten really close with God, I still felt so separated, and I felt like so crazy. I felt like I was really crazy, like I was going insane. And there were people in school, and it was just like, there were people in church, and I always felt like I was stuck in the middle. Like I wasn't holy enough for like the apostolic people at Viewtowns Church, and like I was too holy for my family members, because they always judged me for whenever I said, no, I don't want to watch that movie, it's ungodly. No, I don't want to listen to that song, it's against God, it's sacrilegious. And it just like, on top of all that, I was in that age of being a teenager, like starting up, that it was like I was also too old for everything, too young for everything, too holy for everything, too not holy for everything. It was just a very in-between age to where I felt like I couldn't do anything, and felt like I was stuck in a complacent area. But God taught me a lot then. I even wrote a poem book, which I am releasing the poems to, slowly but surely. And I don't know, it's like, He's done so much for me, I don't even know where to start or know what to say. Like, He is completely, I don't know if I could say completely, but he's cured me of my social anxiety. Now I can talk to people in public, people that I don't even know. I can make friends easily. And like it used to be so hard for me. But like not being ashamed of him and knowing that he is my identity. God is my identity because I trust in him and I only care what he thinks. Knowing that and keeping that in mind has made me no longer care what other people think because it doesn't matter what they think. In the end, it only matters what he thinks. And I don't know, after that, after I had finally got it, cured me from everything, over the span of like a couple years. Obviously, there was still things that were imperfect because people are imperfect and they never will be. Even though I did try to be at some points in my life. I was in a stage where I was very judgmental. I was judgmental towards my mom, towards her relationship, towards my friends even. And it was just, I also had to get over that. And in order to do that, I had to surrender to God and I had to humble myself. And I had to remember that I am no better than them just because God saved me. I am so blessed that God chose me for his kingdom and he chose me to do his good works. But it is not because of me. It is because all that I did was I said yes. God found me. I did not find him. And I am so, so grateful that I got to be growing up in a Christian family, even though they fell from their faith later on. And my mom has gotten a lot back in touch with God, and I'm really hoping the best for her. And my dad, I believe he will get there. It's just, God has just done so much in my life. And now it's, regardless of the pain that I go through, no matter what pain I go through, it's like I used to go through all that pain in vain, and I used to make it worse by sitting in self-pity. But now it all has meaning. Now every ounce of pain that I go through is helping someone get closer to God. Every ounce of pain that I go through is helping me get closer to God, is helping me because he always takes me through it. He never leaves me in the middle. Even when I feel like I'm left there, he never really does. He's just waiting on me to learn patience and waiting on me to learn things. But I feel like I'm so much better of a person now that I found God. And there would be no meaning to life without him. It's honestly hard to see how people live without thinking about Jesus. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people can't do it and they end their own lives. And we need to spread the gospel. Because I don't know the day or the hour, but I know that everyone's days and hours are limited. Even if Jesus didn't come back in our lifetime, our days and our hours are limited. The other day, my mom, one of her coworkers, they just died. They died in a motorcycle accident, just like that. He wasn't even that old. He was in his 20s. And you think about that, people die. They just die. What if one of your family members just died of a heart attack? Think about how terrible that would be, especially if they didn't know God and they didn't believe in him. What happens to unbelievers when they die? Do they get a second chance? I don't know. Only God knows. And you know, it's hard to do a testimony sometimes. Especially when your testimony doesn't end. When your testimony is just, God did this for me, He took me through this, He took me through this. But when you're in something right now, it's kind of hard to share your testimony because there's not going to be one big good ending. And really the only ending there is that God saved me and He's still saving me every day. It feels like every day I have to re-get saved. Every day I have to rededicate my life to Christ. You know, it's not easy walking the Christian life, but when I see others who are walking life without God, it's a lot easier. Because they have no one to run to. They have nothing. Everything they're doing it for nothing. And they may have thought they found meaning, but without God, there truly is no real meaning, because it only lasts for a season. The only thing that is infinite is God. Well, that was my testimony, and I'll probably, some point in the future, I'll probably have a longer, updated version, because I've never shared my testimony before. This is my first time. So, yeah, in the future, I'll probably have a longer, more updated testimony that I'll be able to share with you guys. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and share your testimony. It matters, because if someone isn't saved and they see your testimony, it could be the thing that guides them to salvation. Spread the gospel.